Sophia had always believed that trust was the foundation of love, and for 12 years she never had a reason to doubt her husband Daniel. They weren't perfect. No couple was. There were arguments about schedules, the occasional forgotten anniversary, and the exhaustion of raising two kids. But even on their worst days, she never imagined he would betray her. Until that night. It started with something small, a misplaced phone on the nightstand, screen glowing in the dark. Sophia wasn't the type to snoop, but that night, a feeling, a deep, inexplicable instinct forced her hand. She picked up the phone, her heart hammering as she unlocked it, and there it was, a message from her. "I miss you already." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she scrolled up. The messages weren't flirtatious, they were intimate. "I love the way you make me feel. Last night was unforgettable. When can I see you again?" Her stomach twisted, nausea rising. It felt like a slow-motion car crash, the moment before impact when you realize there's no way out. Her husband, her best friend, was in love with someone else. The door creaked open, and Daniel stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. "Why are you up?" he mumbled sleepily. Then he saw the phone in her hand. Everything froze. The color drained from his face. He didn't even have to ask. He knew. "Sophia," he whispered, stepping toward her. "Don't," she choked out, holding up her hand like a shield. "Don't you dare come near me." She had imagined betrayal before, but she never thought she'd live it. For days, Sophia couldn't breathe. The world moved on around her. Kids still needed lunch, work emails still piled up, but she was stuck in a loop of pain. Was she not enough? Was she blind to the signs? How many times had he kissed her goodnight after kissing someone else? The weight of it crushed her. The worst part? She still loved him. She wanted to hate him, to erase every memory they had built. But love wasn't a switch she could flip off, and that made it even more painful. Daniel knew he had destroyed everything. Watching Sophia break, seeing the light in her eyes dim, was a punishment worse than anything he could imagine. He had been selfish, reckless, and weak. But the affair, it hadn't been about love. It had been an escape from routine, an escape from the version of himself he didn't like, the exhausted father, the uninspired husband, the man who felt invisible in his own life. But the moment Sophia found out, he realized something gut-wrenching. The escape wasn't worth the price of losing her, and now he had to decide. Would he let his mistake define him, or would he fight for the woman he still loved, the woman he had broken? Sophia didn't cry in front of him, not at first. Instead, she built a wall, cold, impenetrable. She slept in the guest room. She barely spoke to him. She didn't yell or scream. She just existed, detached, like a ghost of the woman she used to be, and that terrified him more than anything. One night, as she stood at the sink washing dishes, Daniel approached her cautiously. "Sophia," he said softly. She didn't look up. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'll do anything to make this right." A long silence stretched between them. Then finally she turned to face him. Her eyes, once filled with love, were now hollow. "Then start by telling me the truth," she said. "All of it." Daniel's stomach tightened. The truth wasn't just about the affair. It was about why, and that was a conversation that could make or break them. But if he wanted any chance at saving their marriage, he had to be ready to face the consequences, even if it meant losing her forever. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles turned white. Across from him, Sophia stared, unblinking, her face unreadable. "Start from the beginning," she said, her voice eerily calm. "No more lies, no more half-truths. I want to know everything." Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to protect her from the ugliest details, but he knew this was his test. If he held back, she'd never believe another word he said. "It started 6 months ago," he admitted. "It wasn't planned. I met her at a work event. We talked, and You made a choice," Sophia cut in. "Don't say it just happened. You made a choice." He flinched, but nodded. "Yes, I made a choice, a terrible one." With every confession, how they met, how long it lasted, the moments of hesitation that should have stopped him, he felt the air between them grow colder. But Sophia didn't break down. She didn't scream. Instead, when he was done, she whispered, "Why?" Daniel exhaled shakily. This was the hardest part, the part that would tell her whether she should fight for their marriage or walk away. "I felt invisible," he said, his voice raw, "like I was failing as a husband, as a father. I told myself I was working late for our family, but I was really avoiding home. Not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't feel like I mattered anymore. Sophia's jaw tightened. So you turned to another woman? No, he said quickly. I turned to someone who made me feel seen, and I hate that I let that be enough. Silence stretched between them. Then finally, Sophia stood. I need space. She left him there, staring at the wreckage of their life. The house became a battlefield of silence. They existed under the same roof, but they were no longer partners. They were two people navigating grief in their own ways. Sophia threw herself into work, into the kids, into anything that made her feel like she was in control. Daniel, on the other hand, didn't leave. Not for work trips, not for late nights with friends. He was home, always, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Why doesn't Mommy smile anymore? Their daughter Ava asked one night. Daniel's throat tightened. She's just tired, sweetheart. But they both knew it was more than that. Sophia wasn't tired. She was empty. A month passed, and Sophia realized something. She could stay angry forever, or she could figure out what came next. So she did something she never thought she would. She called a therapist. The first session was just for her. She spilled everything. The rage, the humiliation, the way she couldn't look in the mirror without wondering what was wrong with her. The therapist listened, then asked a question that made her pause. Do you want to heal this marriage, or do you want to heal yourself? Sophia blinked. Aren't they the same thing? No, the therapist said gently. Healing yourself means making peace with what happened, whether you stay or leave. That night she told Daniel, I'm going to therapy, and if you really want to fix this, you should too. He agreed without hesitation, because for the first time since the affair was exposed, he saw hope in her eyes. 2 months after the betrayal, Sophia and Daniel sat across from each other in their first joint therapy session. Sophia was tense, arms crossed, but she was there. The therapist leaned forward. Sophia, what do you need from Daniel to even consider rebuilding trust? Sophia hesitated. Then slowly she spoke. Honesty. No more secrets. No more protecting my feelings. She swallowed. I need to believe that if I ask you a question, I'll get the whole truth. Daniel nodded. I can do that. The therapist turned to him. And Daniel, what do you need from Sophia? He met Sophia's gaze. A chance. Sophia's breath caught, because for the first time she saw something in his eyes that had been missing for a long time. Regret. But also, love. That night, as they sat on opposite sides of the bed, Sophia spoke first. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. Daniel nodded. I know. She exhaled. But I want to try. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise. But it was something. And for the first time in a long time, it was enough. Trust wasn't something Sophia could give freely anymore. It had been stolen from her, shattered, torn apart, replaced by doubt and fear. But she wanted to believe in something again. So that night, after their first joint therapy session, she made Daniel a promise. I'm willing to try, she said, but I need to see you fight for this. I need to see that you want this as much as I do. Daniel nodded without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes. Words. That's all they were. Sophia knew that trust wasn't rebuilt through promises. It was built through actions. And now, Daniel had to prove that every single day. Sophia laid down her conditions. No more passwords, his phone, emails, social media. She had full access. No more lies. If she asked a question, she expected the whole truth. No more disappearing acts. She needed to know where he was, not because she wanted to control him, but because she needed to feel safe again. Daniel agreed to all of it. Not because he wanted to be controlled, but because he understood why she needed it. The first time she checked his phone, she expected resistance. Instead, he handed it over without hesitation. Take your time, he said. I have nothing to hide anymore. It wasn't easy. For weeks, she found herself obsessing over every little thing, every email, every text, every notification. She wanted to believe he was being honest, but the wounds were still fresh. Daniel never complained. If she needed to check, he let her. If she needed reassurance, he gave it. He was finally understanding that trust wasn't his to demand. It was hers to give back when she was ready. Trust wasn't just about what he stopped doing. It was about what he started doing. He left work early to pick up dinner, just so they could eat together. He planned surprise date nights, even when he knew she might not be in the mood. He wrote her letters, something he hadn't done since they were dating, reminding her why she was the most important person in his life. The biggest test came one afternoon when he had to go on a business trip. The last time he traveled, he'd been with her. Sophia felt physically sick as she watched him pack his bag. "I don't think I can handle this," she admitted. Daniel stopped what he was doing and sat beside her. "Then I won't go," he said simply. She frowned. "You can't just not go to work, Daniel." "I can, and I will if it means helping you heal." She searched his face, looking for hesitation. There was none. That's when she realized he wasn't just saying he'd do anything. He meant it. She exhaled slowly. "Go, but call me. Check in. Let me know where you are." Daniel nodded. "Every step of the way." And he did. That night, he FaceTimed her from his hotel room, showed her the empty bed, showed her everything. It wasn't about controlling him. It was about learning how to trust again. And for the first time in months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could. Sophia had good days, and she had days when everything reminded her of the betrayal. A movie scene about cheating? Trigger. A song on the radio? Trigger. A perfume that smelled like hers? Trigger. Daniel never got frustrated. If she needed to cry, he held her. If she needed space, he gave it. He never told her to just get over it. He never made her feel like she was being irrational, because he knew healing wasn't linear. One night, as they lay in bed, she turned to him and whispered, "I still don't know if I can forgive you." Daniel swallowed hard. "I know, but I know that I still love you," she added. Tears burned in his eyes. "That's enough for me." And in that moment, Sophia realized something. Maybe trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight, but love was still there, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep going. Sophia never thought forgiveness would feel like this. People always talked about it like a choice, a decision you make, like flipping a switch. But for her, forgiveness felt like a war inside her own heart. Some days, she woke up and saw the man she fell in love with, the man who made her coffee every morning, who kissed her forehead like she was the most precious thing in the world. Other days, she saw the man who betrayed her, the man who shattered her trust and forced her to rebuild herself from the ground up. Both versions of Daniel lived in her mind, and she had no idea which one she would wake up to. One night, after weeks of trying, Sophia reached her limit. Daniel had planned a beautiful dinner at home, just the two of them. Candles, soft music, her favorite wine. Everything should have felt perfect. But as he reached across the table to hold her hand, a thought struck her like lightning. Did he do this for her too? Her chest tightened. The air felt thick, like she couldn't breathe. Daniel noticed instantly. "Sophia," she pulled her hand away, shaking her head. "I can't do this," she whispered. The chair scraped against the floor as she stood. Daniel followed her. "Talk to me," he pleaded. "Tell me what's wrong." "What's wrong?" she repeated, turning to him with fire in her eyes. "You're what's wrong, Daniel. Us, it's ruined. No matter how hard I try, I can't forget. I can't stop seeing you with her." Daniel's face crumbled. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered, her voice breaking. For the first time in months, Daniel didn't try to defend himself. He didn't tell her to move on or let it go. Instead, he said something that stopped her cold. "Sophia, if you can't forgive me, I understand." His voice was raw, honest. "But please don't forget who we were before this." Her throat tightened. "Because I haven't," he continued. "I still remember the way you looked at me on our wedding day. I remember the way we stayed up all night, dreaming about our future. I remember the woman who made me a better man, long before I became the man who broke her." Tears burned in her eyes, and for the first time, she realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing what to remember. The next morning, Sophia sat in therapy alone. "I don't know if I can ever forgive him," she admitted. Her therapist studied her for a long moment before asking, "What would forgiveness mean to you?" Sophia exhaled. I think it would mean not letting his betrayal define our entire marriage." "And what's stopping you from doing that?" Silence. Finally she whispered, "Fear. Fear of getting hurt again. Fear of trusting too soon. Fear of waking up one day and realizing this was all a mistake." But she also realized something else. If she never forgave Daniel, she would always be trapped in this pain. And she refused to let his mistake have that much power over her. So that night, when Daniel came home, she said something she never thought she'd be ready to say. "I forgive you." Daniel's eyes widened, almost like he didn't believe her. "Sophia, you don't have to." "I know," she interrupted, "but I want to." A tear slipped down his cheek. "Does this mean we're okay?" he asked cautiously. She shook her head. "Number, it means we're finally getting there." Rebuilding trust wasn't about returning to who we were before. It was about becoming something new. They talked more, really talked. No more secrets, no more silence. They learned how to fight fair, how to listen without assuming the worst. They set new boundaries, not out of fear, but out of respect. Sophia also focused on herself. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since before the kids. She joined a book club. She stopped waiting for Daniel to make her happy and started finding happiness within herself. Because forgiveness wasn't just about him, it was about her healing too. Love rebuilt, not replaced. Sophia once believed that love was unbreakable, that if two people were meant to be together, nothing could destroy them. She didn't believe that anymore. Love could break. It could shatter into a million unrecognizable pieces. But she had also learned something even more powerful. Love could be rebuilt, not into what it was before, but into something stronger, wiser, and more resilient. A year had passed since the night everything fell apart. A year of hard conversations, painful memories, and difficult choices. But it was also a year of growth, a year of learning how to trust again, even in small ways. A year of rediscovering the little things that made them, inside jokes, slow dances in the kitchen, the way he still looked at her like she was the best part of his day. A year of choosing each other, even when it was hard. Sophia still had moments of doubt. She still had days when the past whispered in her ear, reminding her of the betrayal. But Daniel never made her feel like she had to rush her healing. If she needed reassurance, he gave it. If she needed space, he respected it. If she needed to talk about the pain, he listened. And because of that, something incredible happened. The pain started fading, not disappearing, just losing its grip on her. Because when she looked at Daniel now, she didn't just see the man who hurt her. She saw the man who fought for her, learning from his experience. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sophia turned to him. "If you could go back," she asked, "would you change it?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Yes," he admitted. "I would give anything to take back the pain I caused you." She nodded. "I believe that." He hesitated, then added, "But if we hadn't gone through this, I don't know if we would have ever been this real with each other." Sophia thought about that. Would they have ever been this honest, this open, this intentional about loving each other? Maybe. Maybe not. All she knew was that they had taken something broken and built something new, and she wasn't sure she would trade that for anything. One afternoon, Sophia found a letter on her pillow, Daniel's handwriting. Her heart pounded as she unfolded it. "Sophia, I know words aren't enough, but I'll never stop telling you anyway. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for choosing me, even when it was hard. Thank you for reminding me that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up over and over again. I will never stop showing up for you. Always." Daniel's tears blurred her vision. For the first time since the affair, she realized something. She didn't just love him, she believed in him again. And maybe that was the real victory. Not just saving their marriage, but creating a love that was deeper, rawer, and more real than ever before. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest. And when she looked up at Daniel, she smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because finally they were free.